I never imagined I'd be writing this, but our life turned upside down in a matter of days. My husband and I met in college. He was this kind, handsome guy who always made me laugh. We dated through college, got married, and started trying for a baby right away. Everything was perfect when our little girl came along 5 years ago. That was until last week when my whole world shattered. My husband confronted me with a paternity test that showed he wasn't our daughter's biological father. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never cheated on him, not once in our entire relationship. We were actively trying to have a baby when I got pregnant. There was absolutely no possibility of anyone else being her father. The past few months should have been a warning sign. My husband had changed, becoming distant, suspicious, and constantly asking to check my phone without explaining why. He spent hours locked in his office, and his behavior toward our daughter shifted too. He barely spent time with her anymore. That morning, he told me he took the test because he realized our daughter's brown eyes couldn't come from our blue ones. He demanded I leave the house. When I refused, he locked himself in our bedroom, leaving me to sleep in our daughter's room, terrified and confused about what would happen next. After hours of crying and waiting, he finally came out to talk. I tried explaining again that I had never been unfaithful, suggesting we take more tests to prove the first one was wrong. He wasn't ready to discuss details, but agreed to continue the conversation the next day. Despite everything, he hugged me when I asked, though it felt different, hesitant and unsure. I spent that night making lists of ways to prove my innocence. I researched reputable laboratories for new tests and gathered all our medical records from my pregnancy. I even thought about asking our college friends to vouch for our relationship's history. The thought of losing my family over something I hadn't done was unbearable. My husband's words kept echoing in my head. He said if more tests proved I had cheated, he would go scorched earth. The fear of losing everything we'd built together kept me awake all night. I couldn't help but wonder what had led him to doubt me so completely, to destroy the trust we'd built over years with a single test. The next few days were a blur of appointments and more tests. We decided to have comprehensive blood work done on all three of us, my husband, our daughter, and me. That's when our world truly turned upside down. The results showed something neither of us had ever considered possible. Our daughter wasn't biologically related to either of us. The police came to our house to take statements. We're now in the middle of a lawsuit against the hospital where I gave birth. Every night, I lie awake wondering about my biological daughter, where she is, if she's safe, if she's loved as much as we love the little girl we've raised. The thought that somewhere out there, another family might be raising my birth child makes my heart ache in ways I never knew possible. My husband and I found ourselves dealing with a crisis neither of us had ever imagined. All his suspicions about infidelity vanished, replaced by a shared sense of confusion and loss. We went from barely speaking to holding each other through tears, trying to make sense of how this could have happened. I've started sleeping in our daughter's room again, but for different reasons now. I watch her peaceful face while she sleeps, memorizing every detail. Sometimes I wonder if someone else is doing the same thing with my biological daughter, studying her features and seeing traces of me in them. It's a thought that both comforts and haunts me. We decided to keep this situation quiet for now. Our daughter is too young to understand, and we don't want her to become the subject of neighborhood gossip. She's just an innocent child who deserves to maintain her normal life for as long as possible. The last thing we need is for her to overhear something at school or for other kids to treat her differently. I've spent countless hours searching online for support groups or similar stories, but all I find are sensationalized news articles treating situations like ours as entertainment. It feels isolating, like we're the only ones going through this, even though logically I know there must be others out there somewhere. My husband finally opened up about what led to the paternity test. During the pandemic, he gained some weight and fell into depression. He started spending time in online forums where people shared stories of betrayal and infidelity. Someone posted about discovering their partner's affair because of their child's eye color being impossible based on genetics. That post sent him down a spiral of doubt and fear. He admitted to making his own post asking for advice, and people told him to get a secret paternity test, warning him that confronting me first would give me a chance to hide evidence or plan for divorce. When the test came back negative, all those toxic voices in his head seemed validated. He was terrified of losing everything: our daughter, our home, his whole life as he knew it. The revelation about his mental state and the online influences that fed his fears helped me understand his behavior better. While it didn't excuse everything, it showed me how easily fear and insecurity can poison someone's thoughts. We've started seeing a therapist together, working through the complex emotions this situation has stirred up. Sometimes I catch myself daydreaming about finding our biological daughter. I imagine scenarios where both families could somehow blend together, maybe even live close by so the girls could grow up knowing each other. Then reality hits and I realize how complicated that would be. What if the other family doesn't want anything to do with us? What if they want to keep things as they are? What if they're not even looking for answers? Recently, things got even more complicated when my husband discovered I'd been writing about our situation online. He follows this YouTuber who apparently shared our story, and that's how he found my posts. He was hurt by some comments people had made about him, calling him horrible names and making assumptions about our marriage. My husband wanted to share his side of the story, to explain how he'd fallen into a dark place during COVID. He talked about how he'd always felt slightly unworthy of me, and how those insecurities made him vulnerable to the toxic advice he found online. While I stayed relatively okay during the pandemic, he struggled with depression and self-image issues. Seeing me unaffected only made him feel worse about himself. Looking at him now, I don't see the fat person he describes himself as. I see the same man I fell in love with in college, just carrying the weight of our current situation on his shoulders. We're both different people than we were before this started, but maybe that's not entirely bad. We've learned to communicate better, to share our fears instead of letting them fester. The legal process is moving forward slowly. Our lawyer says cases like this are complicated and can take years to resolve. We're trying to prepare ourselves for a long journey, but it's hard not to want immediate answers. Every time I look at our daughter, I wonder if somewhere another mother is looking at her child, my biological child, having the same thoughts. I've started keeping a journal of everything that happens, partly for legal purposes, but also for our daughter. Someday, when she's old enough to understand, we'll need to tell her the truth. I want to be able to show her how much we loved her through all of this, how we fought to protect her from unnecessary pain and confusion. My husband and I have made a pact to face whatever comes next together. The irony isn't lost on us. What started as a test that nearly tore us apart ended up bringing us closer than ever. We're no longer just partners. We're allies in this strange journey neither of us chose. Last night, we were watching our daughter play in the backyard, and my husband turned to me with tears in his eyes. He apologized again for doubting me, for letting fear drive him to make choices that hurt us both. I told him what I truly believe, that sometimes the worst situations show us what we're made of, and our family is made of stronger stuff than we knew. We don't know what the future holds. Maybe we'll find our biological daughter. Maybe we won't. Maybe there will be another family to welcome into our lives, or maybe things will stay as they are. What we do know is that love isn't just about DNA. Our daughter is ours in all the ways that matter, and nothing can change that. The hospital has started an internal investigation, and we're not the only family they're contacting. There might be more stories like ours out there, more families struggling with similar revelations. It's terrifying, but also somewhat comforting to know we're not alone in this. For now, we're focusing on healing our family and protecting our daughter's happiness. We've learned that sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family biology intended. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together, not as a perfect family, but as a real one, with all its complications and unexpected turns.